Host News Channel 7. This is Viewpoint.
And welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Doug Petcash. As the year 2021 hits the home stretch, lawmakers in Washington, D.C. are making decisions on monumental issues, big money issues, involving hundreds of billions of dollars or even $1 trillion or three. Your tax dollars. I'm talking about measures to improve the country's roads and bridges, to pay for social programs and to fight climate change, and to just pay the country's bills. The U.S. House of Representatives just joined the Senate in passing a bill to temporarily raise the nation's debt ceiling by $480 billion until December 3rd. The vote was along party lines, with Democrats supporting it and Republicans against it. Congress is also still dealing with the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill to improve America's roads, bridges, water quality, airports, and broadband. It passed in the Senate and is awaiting action in the House. Then there's the president's $3.5 trillion Build Back Better bill that would increase spending on education, health care, child care, and efforts to combat climate change, among other things. It's all happening as the fight against the coronavirus continues, as unvaccinated COVID patients fill Idaho's hospitals, straining the healthcare system, and as the deadline for President Biden's vaccine mandate for federal workers and companies with 100 or more employees approaches. Idaho 1st District Congressman Russ Fulcher has been voting on and voicing his viewpoint on these big issues of the day, while working on others he believes are important to the people of Idaho. And he's continued working while undergoing treatment for kidney cancer, a diagnosis he announced back in mid-June. And Republican 1st District Congressman Russ Fulcher is my guest today to talk about the big issues of the day for the nation and Idaho. Representative Fulcher is in his second term. He serves on the House Natural Resources Committee and the Education and Labor Committee. Good morning, Congressman, and how are you doing?
You know what? I'm doing well, thank you. And in that prep shot, I was reminded that I used to have hair, but that was prior to chemotherapy. So it's good to be here, and I feel well.
So can you give us an update on where you stand in your treatment process and how it's going?
Sure. And it's been going pretty well, and I feel pretty good. There were two major processes that were recommended for my situation. And one was chemotherapy and another was surgery to clean up whatever the chemotherapy didn't get. Completely done with the first part of that. And Doug, it is not for the faint of heart. I have learned so much, and I have such an appreciation now for people who go through this and who've been through this and have to deal with it on a more regular basis. And so thankful for the technology we have and for the systems that we've got, and things are going pretty well. And with God's blessing here, within a couple of months, this will be totally done.
And so the chemotherapy is finished. You have a surgery to go, so the prognosis looks good?
It looks real good. And just for the record, it's not kidney cancer, it's in the renal system. And
okay.
So it's close, but fortunately, all the major organs seem to be just fine. And we're going to get through this here and hopefully very soon.
Well, you've managed to keep working while undergoing chemotherapy. How have you been able to do that logistically?
All of my treatment has been local, and that's been one of the blessings that's come with that. The local medical system has been incredibly accommodating with my schedule, and so I've been able to come and go as I need to, and they've just worked with that schedule. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I would have had to go out of the area for the chemotherapy portion, but I didn't have to, and so it's worked out extremely well, especially now with so many things going on.
And so you did a lot of it probably virtually, right?
Did virtual and in DC as well. I tried to be smart about it when the immunity system was extremely low. I tried to do as much virtual as I could when it was up. And for those who've been through this know that your immunity goes up and down, then you can do some travel or whatever you need to. But I've tried to be smart about that. And fortunately, the logistics have worked out pretty well.
How has this changed your outlook?
Well, first of all, I've never had a health situation where I've had to go get care because of something that I didn't cause. I mean, I've been in accidents and those types of things, but this was a real wake-up call, and it makes you appreciate this whole thing called life, and makes you go back and double check the things that are the most important thing on your priority list. And so, cancer is the C word. It's scary. and it has to be taken seriously. And fortunately, we're living in a time where it can be treated. And so any way you slice it, it's been a real wake-up call for just the priorities in your life, and I'm no exception to that.
Well, we got to talk about politics too. So has this battle had an impact on whether or not you will run again in 2022?
Oh no, I'm planning on running in 22, and there's no reason why. Like I say, hopefully this should be totally in the rearview mirror here within the next 60 days or so, and everything has worked out according to plan thus far. And so no, I'm planning on being there, and Lord willing, and this works out the way it should, I will be there.
Well, thank you for sharing about your personal battle with that, and my best on your continued recovery.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's stick on the health front for a moment. As you know, Idaho hospitals are still operating under crisis standards of care, and they're being strained by a high number of unvaccinated COVID patients. How concerned are you about the coronavirus situation in Idaho?
Well, it just seems to keep going, and now with the mandates and with the ramifications that's got on workforce, it impacts the economy, and it's filtering through our entire system. And we're seeing that from the longshoremen on Long Beach and the trucking industry, and it's filtering its way to our grocery stores or not. And that's just one example. But Doug, this thing just continues to go, and we as a society have to deal with it in a way that just says no more. We're not going to let the economy shut down. We're going to deal with this head on. The mandates are going to have to be dealt with. In my opinion, that needs to be on a local basis, but or at least as much as possible. But we've got some serious issues, and it's the pandemic has not helped with any of it.
So I take it you're against President Biden's vaccine mandate for federal workers and companies with 100 or more employees then?
I am. And, this ultimately is going to be probably settled in the courts, but there is federal legislation that would have rejected any kind of a mandate, but it will not be heard in the House and probably the Senate either. But it is out there. But personally, I think that it's best dealt with at the local level anyway. But certainly from a federal level, there should not be the overreach of a mandate, in my view, coming out of the federal government.
Do you think people should get vaccinated?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a whole different argument for whether you're pro-vaccine or not, and there's a wonderful technology that's come through these vaccines, and so I encourage that, but I also encourage people to be informed and comfortable with what they want to do. And it's not my place or anyone else in government, as far as I'm concerned, to tell them that they have to do one thing or the other.
And have you been vaccinated, can I ask?
I have. In my case, it was pretty clear, because I knew that I was going into a situation where my immunity would be wiped out. And so I was taking every precaution that I possibly could to try to bolster that, because there simply wasn't going to be any natural immunity because of this whole cancer treatment thing. And so in my case, yes.
I want to ask you one question that came up recently, kind of an offshoot of the COVID issue, is that you signed on to a letter from congressional Republicans objecting to the Justice Department investigating violent threats made against local school board members and teachers as meetings have become heated over mask mandates and critical race theory. Why do you oppose the DOJ getting involved?
Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, our parents are the bosses, and that's the way the whole republic was set up in the first place, is that the government's there to serve the people, not the other way around. And so to vilify parents for getting involved is something that I believe is absolutely incorrect. The other reason is this totally removes any kind of local authority. There's no jurisdiction for the federal government to come into a local school board and intervene. It takes the county, the city, entirely out of the process, the state. And so it's just simply wrong. And it's another one of these tactics that I believe is federal overreach and federal control that simply is inappropriate.
So is it a jurisdictional thing in the sense that, should these violent threats be investigated, but just not by the DOJ?
If you know, it depends on how you define what violent is. I mean, if you've got a person who's going into a school board and they're simply being inquisitive or even obnoxious, yeah, maybe they will need to be removed from the room or something, or at least to have some kind of a technical timeout. But that's a whole lot different than having the FBI come in and investigate and potentially penalize. This can be dealt with locally. It's going to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be any kind of boundaries, because of course there has to be with all kind of human behavior, but not with the FBI at a local school board.
Moving on to another topic now. The House just voted 219 to 206 to temporarily raise the nation's debt limit, $480 billion until December 3rd. You voted not to raise it. Why?
One thing that doesn't get talked about much is the pathway we are on fiscally as a nation is simply not sustainable. And there is no significant dialogue within Congress or the executive branch to deal with it. The need for this debt increase, the debt limit increase, is due to the so-called reconciliation bill. And that's the big infrastructure bill. And well, it's not so much infrastructure, but it's the big bill that's hung under the infrastructure name. And there's been incredibly partisan. There hasn't been one Republican on either side that has been supportive of this in its entirety. And so the position that the Republicans have taken on this is, okay, if the Democrats are going to ram this through, they're going to do it with this so-called reconciliation process. It's going to be entirely partisan. Then they can take the responsibility to raise the debt limit too. And we're not going to help them with that. And so that's part of the dialogue that's gone on, and that's why that vote went down the way that it did.
And the Democrats argue, though, that this is basically Republican debt from the Trump administration that they're paying the bills for.
Oh, I don't think that there's any question that there is enough blame to go around. I didn't agree with it then, and I brought it up with President twice in person on at least 2 different occasions. And so there's definitely some ownership there. By the same token, it has not even close to the scope by which they're looking at raising it now. And Doug, it goes well beyond that, because the types of programs that they're looking to fund with this next round of their so-called infrastructure bill, which is in nothing more than the socialism of America, it goes pretty much permanent. Mm-hmm. And so this is a whole different deal. And so the argument again that this is a Trump problem is a bankrupt argument as far as I'm concerned. There's definitely some spending that previous governments and administrations have had that have contributed to this, no question about it. But what the current administration and the current leadership is looking at doing is a quantum leap beyond anything we've ever done before as a nation.
Congressman Simpson told me that he'll vote against the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, but both Senators Crapo and Risch voted for it, basically arguing that it was the lesser of 2 evils compared to the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better bill, and also that this 1.2 doesn't really raise taxes because it's using unspent coronavirus relief money. What's your take on the first part of this, the $1.2 trillion? Do you have any support for it, or are you against it?
I'll be opposing it, and it's because the circumstances have changed. And by the way, I don't criticize my colleagues for their actions. They were working under a different set of circumstances over on the Senate side. They had a standalone bill, and that's not the case on the House side. On the House side, it's going to be coupled with a 3.5 trillion, and that's with a T, socialization bill that is going to be combined with that for some total of 5+ trillion, and some argue that it'll actually work out to be more than that. So I can't support those types of things. Once again, this is not sustainable, Doug. We can't continue down this path. The notion that somehow the United States is immune from the ramifications of no borders on spending is just simply incorrect, and we have to pay that at some point in time. Right now, you and I will likely not be alive when that gets paid off. It's going to be our kids, our grandkids, and that's simply is simply not right. And to teach our citizenry that you can spend and not have any type of ramification as a function of that is simply wrong. And so no, I can't support it.
And I guess the 3.5 trillion then is just a non-starter for you.
Non-starter totally. This is a redefinition of infrastructure. We used to say that roads and bridges and airports and water systems and things like that, that's infrastructure, and it has been, and that's what it truly should be. But the current leadership has redefined that term to mean free college and daycare and amnesty, for goodness sake, on a massive scale. And so that's what this bill is about, and the reduction of American energy production. This is a socialization of America. And if this gets through and truly implemented, I don't know that we recover or not. Once you put programs in place to offer so-called free stuff, which is really at the expense of other taxpayers, in this case, it's debt, so it's in the future for future taxpayers, then you addict people to those programs. And it's very difficult to remove them once they're in place. And so this is a horrific piece of legislation. I believe it's the most prolific example of partisanship, certainly since I've been there, and I've been there through a very, very divisive time.
Let's leave it there for now, Congressman, and we'll be right back. Up next, geothermal energy and wildfires. Stay tuned.